If you want uncut and extended versions of my videos, go to patreon.com/traplawross. Also, you can now watch my new drops on Spotify, so go search me there. Here's the video. 051 Melly is one of the most notorious gangsters in Chicago history. Given the nickname the Chirac Gravedigger, Melly is undoubtedly one of the most dangerous people to ever emerge from the Windy City, with rumours of him having caught as many as 15 bodies while participating in up to 43 different hits in multiple overlapping gang wars. Melly was as feared as he was respected. He applied so much pressure to his enemies in the streets that when he finally ended up losing his life, his ops were ecstatic, with many taking to the recording booth to diss this demonic shooter that had been terrorizing them for years. Melly really struck fear into the most seasoned Chicago shooters, with the likes of King Von rumored to have had 7 bodies of his own, celebrating Melly's death with glee in his most famous song, Back Again. While King Von gained a reputation as rap's first serial killer for his alleged 7 murders that he got away with and rapped about, many in the city had already dubbed Melly as the original serial killer of the Chicago streets. The difference is, Melly never released music, but simply rose to notoriety through his reputation as a shooter and killer, whispered in the streets by those he pressured and extensively praised by rappers from his own gang for his extensive street portfolio. The mysterious murderer has been made famous by the Chicago drill community, but until now, nobody has ever determined once and for all the extent to which Melly was indeed a serial killer who caught bodies as routinely as a regular citizen catches the bus. So today, we're going to break down once and for all the many murders of 051 Melly and determine once and for all if this legendary Chicago gangster really is the serial killer they say he is.
How do you feel about 051 Melly getting compared with King Von and Tay Savage? Like those are the 3 names that everyone's comparing them to.
No, you can't compare my brother to nobody.
One of the most reckless BDs out here, but I'm BDK, but he BDK.
What's y'all nation, bro? We the reason why y'all got y'all name right now. You know that.
And y'all the reason why y'all got a name. Y'all got a name. It's never been no killing without killing.
Man, hey, this bus stop right here though. This a real famous place. Yeah?
It's crazy because Melly got this reputation. He ain't never even dropped any music, but everybody know him.
That's a free throw girl and Vaughn. Freedom though. I'd rather them dead than in jail.
But she be tripping a lot, you know. She be upset. Like she don't be having that much playtime sometimes.
You was just saying I'm the youngest in charge out here.
I've been the youngest in charge for some years now, you know.
You scared of the dark? No. I'm one of them type of guys that be in the dark waiting for you when you gotta go pee at night.
You had just lost an artist that you just signed to OTF. So this is like the second time in 6 months.
Yeah, it's the second time.
And I just get you, and you don't never come back to your parents again.
I'm with the nigga that did. He don't want to be on camera though. Hit his ass up right here on Pat. Now I got that order for Nuski. Chino burger. Chino burger.
Just let me a piece.
Yeah, Chino burger. That's what they said.
I got shot 2 weeks. He is bad.
You want me to read you a bedtime story and tuck you in?
From 600. I thought that was extinct on Tuka Grade.
When he walked down the dark alley, he ain't make it to the other end of the alley.
5 o'clock in the morning, still outside, me and my tour. Who they were, the police?
Y'all know damn well y'all want finna catch me.
Man, they just killed y'all.
Who allegedly killed Melly, got charged 0078. Is that someone you friends with?
Okay. Like I said, 44K, 46K, 300K, 600K. Getting that Melly weight, getting that ring.
Go make it. We'll make it to 100 years, yo. I'm gonna be one of the last ones standing.
Yeah, you know how to move.
Yarmel Devontae Jameer Williams, better known as 051 Melly, was born on November the 19th, 1991 to a mother named Angie and a father named Yamur. Melly grew up with 2 siblings, including his brother Wu and his sister Kenjia. Wu's father, Jerome Golden, aka Fido, was also Melly's stepfather until he would get a life sentence in 1994 for a quadruple murder where he allegedly took part in the slaying of 4 men for selling drugs in the wrong turf. Fido apparently being a member of the BDN, or Black Disciple Nation, who controlled the area where Melly grew up, a gang that we'll be discussing in more detail. Melly was also close to his 2 uncles, G Slim, who was one of the founders of the No Limit, or NLMB, gang set from the so-called east side of Chicago, who have heritage in the gang the Black P Stones, a crew known for their infamous rappers like G Herbo, Lil Bibby, and Mellow Bucks, and Kurt Mack, who was a well-known member hailing from the so-called Dro City area in Woodlawn, where the original creator of drill music, the rapper Pac-Man, also hailed from. Melly's family connections even reach all the way to the rapper Bump J, who reps the Four Corner Hustlers gang, and who is perhaps the most popular gangster rapper from Chicago before the drill era began. Clearly, gangs have been a part of Melly's life since a very young age, but interestingly, Melly's family connections could have taken his life in a completely different route than it ultimately did. Because while Melly has become known as one of the deadliest rivals of world-famous rappers like Lil Durk and King Von, they actually grew up in the same areas and circles. Melly spent his early years in the Randolph Tower, also known as the Calumet Building or simply the Met Building, a large public housing project located at 6217 South Calumet Avenue, only a block away from the infamous O Block, aka Parkway Gardens, which guys like Chief Keef and King Von would later begin to claim. Randolph Tower was known as one of the biggest Black Disciple strongholds in Chicago during the 90s and early 2000s.
Well, police discovered a gruesome double murder in a Southside Chicago apartment today after an anonymous tip. The bodies of 57-year-old Jesse Jackson, not of Operation Push, and an unidentified young woman were found murdered at 6217 South Calumet Avenue. Jackson lived in the apartment. The woman in her mid-20s lived nearby. The bodies were tied together with electrical cord, and police say there is no sign of forced entry and no weapons were found in the room.
Until their leadership was indicted for running a corporate-style drug empire in 2004, where dealers were making up to $45,000 a day selling drugs, while other members would guard the building from the roof, even making use of sniper rifles and night vision goggles. And while the gang had their headquarters in the Met Building, or the Castle as they called it, they would control the drug trade across a very large area, which included the Parkway Gardens, aka O Block. But besides Melly, numerous people famous within the drill scene grew up in the Met Building, such as Chief Keef, Lil Reese, and even FYB Maine.
Everybody that's out here for real, that's like I don't even want to really name, but like Melly, all these big time, they really from 6217, right? Straight up, like FYB Maine. 6217, baby, like, right. You feel me?
Like, Reese from there too, man.
Yeah, 6217. Reese, my cousin, 6217, baby, yeah. Right. Keith, 6217, baby.
Right. All these people came out of the building. Right.
6217, baby. Capo, right. 6217, baby.
The legendary GBE Capo.
My cousin, yeah, 6217, baby. For sure. All they had 6217 babies. They had, like, it's just like, when the Calumet building got took down, back when I was a shorty, you know, went to their blocks and you know that shit.
In fact, Jay Main's father was one of the board members of the gang who ruled their operations inside and outside the building.
My pops is a man, he originated in the Calumet building, and he did get indicted, and he did get locked up in 2004, and yeah, they labeled him as a Black disciple. It do hit different when they labeled Pops as a Black disciple, and he went down as one of them board members, bro. It do hit different. My dad was a my childhood. Yeah, he ran a certain area from a certain part of Chicago, from the state to the lake. That's what I read in the paperwork on for them grade. Like I say, I ain't here putting it on Pops. They do it different.
The Randolph Tower was eventually demolished in 2006 as part of the Chicago Housing Authority's plan to get rid of almost all of the large public housing projects in the city. But at some point, Melly's family moved to another address in the same neighborhood, located near 59th and Calumet. This area eventually becoming known as the turf of the Set 600, who would later become Melly's worst enemies, as Melly's brother Wu would later recollect during his DJU interview.
I'm saying, like, we stayed there. I used to have to walk out there with my sword. Like, that's how we came out there. With the sword on 59th, that's what it was, you feel me? Like, I was in their hood, I lived in their hood, like, I walked from there, I used to walk from 59th to the 51st through the park, like, you feel me? Yeah. But when I was out on 59th, it wasn't up like how it was, you feel me? Like, had like, look, you know how we sneaky talking, we wasn't like into it, but I had secret animosity, but we ain't just nobody to play with, you feel me? So you ain't gonna do nothing you want to do for real. Right. And that's just what it was. Okay, cool.
Although Melly would seemingly keep living in the area for some time, he would ultimately become close with kids from the opposite side of Washington Park who hung around the 51st Street and were part of a gang set known as 051 Young Money, who were primarily identifying as Mickey Cobras. Melly is in fact the same generation as the older founding members of this gang, such as Carlos Merrill, aka Lil Los, Lance Youngblood, and Isaiah Walker, aka Zico, who were all killed in 2008 when Melly was still in high school. Particularly the murder of Zico, who is often considered as the main founder of the 051 Young Money gang, would play a role in defining one of Melly's earliest rivalries with the set known as 4-6 Terror, later named THF-46, whose member Aki Walton was actually convicted of Zico's murder. Having had 3 people close to you killed during just 1 year before the drill culture would even escalate the gang rivalry in the city is truly tragic, and it may partly explain why Melly would eventually turn into such a cold-blooded killer that he allegedly was. However, this was only the beginning for Melly losing people around him. In July 2009, 21-year-old Dominic Barnes from the 051 neighborhood would be shot and killed, which would years later lead to THF-46 member and Lil Durk's good friend THF Bezu getting charged for the murder, but he would end up beating these charges. Bezu himself would allegedly almost be killed by 051 in April 2011 when 18-year-old THF-46 affiliate Quinton Turner, aka Quint, was killed in a triple shooting, where Bezu was also hit. Years later, Melly would bring up this incident while on Instagram Live with Bezu, after Bezu would claim that Melly and other 051 members were all good kids until THF forced them to hop in the streets by applying so much pressure.
Hey Melly, who forced y'all in?
Who the reason why we play with guns?
Who forced y'all in?
Y'all the first people
y'all would drive y'all mama's cars in 8th grade, bro.
See, you lying. I want to drive my mama's car. I
want
to drive
y'all grammar school driving y'all mama's cars. The whole your money was the basketball players. Keep it real.
Oh, now you lying for you just said half of us ain't. You can say half the young money was basketball players. You ain't gonna say nobody know.
Hey Melly, man, half y'all was the mama's boys, man. Y'all drive y'all mama's car in 7th and 8th grade, bro. We forced y'all in this, bro. We the reason why y'all got y'all name right now. You know that.
You say y'all the reason why we got us a name, and y'all the reason why y'all got a name. Y'all got a name. It go both ways. No, it go both ways. If we start this on here, I don't even give a damn. You want to start this on? It's gonna go both ways.
We've been.
It's never been no killing without killing. We gonna keep it real though.
We've been into it y'all since 07, bro.
You damn right, but it's never been no killing without killing though. We ain't gonna.
I'm saying what year somebody died from our block?
You said what year?
For sure.
You go get killed in 08. I'm keeping fun. Then somebody died in 10, right?
Never heard of it.
What?
10.
They ain't have it back to back. Then somebody died in 10 right there. Then you get shot then?
I got shot in 11.
All right, well, 11. You got shot, right?
Yeah.
You got shot and then somebody checked, right? All right, we ain't gonna be.
Sure.
All right, look, we ain't gonna be doing it on the internet. That ain't for the internet.
.051's gang rivalries would begin to intensify during the early 2010s, boosted by the rise of social media and the start of the drill music movement. Perhaps the first casualty of this new era on .051's side was 18-year-old Tariq Mahdi, aka T Streets, who was gunned down in November 2011 on a quiet stretch of street in the Washington Park neighborhood. And while this murder has remained unsolved, there have been numerous different theories about who might have been behind it, with many thinking that this was actually the first casualty in the years-long war between .051 and the 600 set. After all, the murder took place very close to 600's hood. However, this theory has been challenged by many people who often claim that T Streets was in fact killed by .051's old enemies, THF-46. King Von, on the other hand, would famously name-drop T Streets in his popular song I Am What I Am, rapping how somebody tried to do a peace treaty and ended up dying like T Streets. These lyrics perhaps hinting that T Streets' murder has a backstory that might not be fully known to the people on the outside. But whatever actually happened, the fact that Melly's first alleged kill would take place only a few days before T Streets' first posthumous birthday, and Melly was certainly claiming to have been killing people in T Streets' name. On the 2nd of February 2012, 20-year-old Shaquille Rush, aka Shaq, was attending a party with his friends in the 600 set's turf. While Shaq wasn't seemingly actively involved in gangbanging, he lived in the neighborhood and was friends with many members of the 600 set, and in a picture allegedly taken on the night of the party, he can be seen with 600 members C-Day and Inky D dropping the 051 Y hand sign as a sign of disrespect to that set. Later that night, Shaq would reportedly leave the party together with a woman, and they would walk through an alley on the 5900 block of South Calumet Avenue where Shaq would possibly stop to take a leak. At this point, one or more people would appear from behind them and open fire, hitting Shaq once on the upper back while grazing the girl on the shoulder. Police and medics would then soon arrive to the scene, and Shaq would be transported to the Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where he would unfortunately succumb to his injuries. The following day, local news would report on the murder, stating how Shaq had been killed only 3 blocks away from his home on the 6000 block of South Michigan Avenue. But interestingly, Melly was living, or at least had still recently lived, right on the 5900 block of South Calumet Avenue, where Shaq was killed. killed. But that certainly wasn't the only thing connecting Melly to this murder, because afterwards, Melly would start a years-long campaign dissing Shaq, often taunting 600 members by mentioning how Shaq had been killed whilst he was taking a leak, and most famously in one incredibly dark clip, describing to a little girl how he's exactly the type of guy who would pull off a murder while someone was peeing.
Boy, back right now. Boy, you ain't getting that. I'll let you know. You know how I play out here. You don't come with that money, shawty. You come up in there missing. You talking? You don't know who I am? You don't know who I am?
I know my daddy.
You scared of the dark?
No.
I'm one of them type of guys that be in the dark waiting for you when you gotta go pee at night. And I just get you, and you don't never come back to your parents again. You hear me? Then your TT ain't gonna be able to save you. Your daddy, he gonna be crying somewhere like, man, she don't got nothing to do with me, just take me.
Still, some people close to the events have denied Melly actually being behind the murder, most notably 600 veteran Tay Capone, who has openly said on his YouTube channel that Melly actually wasn't the killer. Another person often connected to this murder is an 051 member called Kiddo, who has similarly dissed Shaq on many occasions, even tweeting, "Kill Shaq, then forget about Shaq," only a few weeks after the murder, with this actually being a play on Chief Keef lyrics from his 2012 hit song 300. But whether the killer was Melly or someone else, it seems that 600 clearly considered 051 to be responsible, as they would allegedly end up avenging Shaq's death only a few months later in June, when the only 14-year-old Antonio Davis, aka Fathead, who was one of the youngest members of 051 but had been hanging out with them since he was a kid, was walking to a store with his cousin in the Englewood neighborhood. An assailant would spot Fathead from a van before approaching him on foot and shooting him numerous times while standing over him. Nobody has ever been convicted of this murder, and in online spaces it's been a topic of intense debate for years now. But the Chicago police consider the case to be exceptionally cleared and committed by several people, most notably 2 members of the 600 set, Walter Smith, aka S-Dot, and Courtney Ely, aka C-Day, as well as a member of Lil Durk's Dameron set named Marvin Riley, aka OJ, who the police claim to have been the triggerman based on Fathead's cousin's description of the killer. Only a few days after the murder, Melly would once again begin to taunt 600 members, openly bragging how his set had killed Shaq, while claiming that 600 couldn't say they had killed anyone from his set, perhaps referring to OJ being the one who actually killed Fathead. On the other hand, Fathead's brother has seemingly put the blame directly on C-Day, who's also known by the nickname 22 Shots, writing on a tribute post to Fathead how he's 622K or 60022 killer. In any case, the murders of T Streets and Fathead launched a years-long rivalry, which wasn't just limited to tit-for-tat killings between 051 and 600, but would become part of a larger war in the South Side between 051 and their affiliates, and numerous majority black disciple sets affiliated with 600, like O-Block, Front Street, Dameron, and of course THF-46, who had already been at war with 051 for years at this point. 051 would allegedly avenge Fathead's death in November 2012, killing a 19-year-old named Trey Henry, aka Trix, who was affiliated with 600. This was followed in June 2013 with the murder of 19-year-old Robert Allen, known as Lil Rob, or Beto, from the Dameron set. These murders have remained officially unsolved, but 051 has heavily claimed both, with Melly too implying that his set was behind these murders. Although Melly himself isn't often directly connected to these murders in online rumors, regardless of who had done what, 05 weren't done killing, and in September 2013, they would strike again, killing 17-year-old Leonard Anderson, better known as the up-and-coming rapper LA Capone from the 600 set. This was a devastating blow for 600, as LA was considered their most promising rapper, who had become increasingly close with other rappers in the community, like Lil Durk, who at this point had already signed a major deal with Def Jam Records and was rumored to have been in the works of helping LA Capone land a major record deal for himself as well.
He kept telling me that he's supposed to be meeting T.I., so flying to Atlanta with Durk and meeting T.I. and like that. This is what he used to be telling me, like before, like around time, for out, meet T.I. He was flying out at this point, like he went on a couple shows with Durk.
LA's murder would eventually be solved, leading to the arrest and convictions of 2 051 members, Michael Mays, aka 051 Rocco or Rockhead, and Saki Hardy Johnson, aka Lil Mick, as well as a third person named Miko Buchanan. 051 Melly, on the other hand, would once again take part in the dissing, making numerous tweets in the days following LA Capone's murder where he would make fun of him and boasting about all the people that his set had killed to avenge Fathead's death. But interestingly, Melly would often also mention Lil Durk in his tweets, making it seem that he was actually a fan of Durk's music, despite Durk being such close friends friends with Melly's enemies. But whether he was serious or just trolling at this point, Melly's fixation on Lil Durk would eventually become Lil Durk's worst nightmare. In March 2014, 600 would allegedly get their revenge as 20-year-old Mark Campbell, better known as Lil Mark from 051, would be brutally gunned down in broad daylight while standing on the bus stop at 51st Street. Only a few days before his murder, Lil Mark had dropped a diss song called No Competition, a remix of Lil Durk's song Competition, dedicated diss track aimed towards the Black Disciple sets like 600, Lil Durk's Dameron, and King Von's O-Block. This song had made Lil Mark the #1 target in the streets, and it wouldn't take long before those who Lil Mark had dissed would be claiming his murder, with particularly D Rose from 600 and King Von from O-Block starting the dissing only hours after Lil Mark's death. But this time also Lil Durk, whose song Lil Mark had remixed just before dying, would decide to take the dissing to a whole new level, actually filming himself at the very bus stop where Lil Mark had been gunned down, telling people that he was in a very famous place, along with the caption 3THFTP, this being a member of the THF46 set who actually made an entire song dissing Lil Mark titled Bus Stop.
Bus stop, man. Hey, this bus stop right here though. This is a real famous place. You hear me? This is a real famous place, B. Hey, this bus stop, this is a real famous place, B. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know what I'm saying? Free my nigga team.
In online theories, this video is often considered to have perhaps been one of the biggest mistakes that Lil Durk has ever made, because while Durk was already a famous rapper, traveling all over the country, making it very hard for his ops to catch him, it seems that 051 Melly, after this video, would make it his mission to show that in the streets of Chicago, he was the one in charge, and that everyone close to Durk that still was in these streets would not be safe. Moreover, Melly had become close with Durk's old friends, as Durk and his OTF crew had a falling out with the rapper King Louie and his MUBU crew in the summer of 2013. This all came out after a fight would erupt between MUBU and OTF, together with Chief Keef's Glow Gang, while they were performing in Iowa. After this scuffle, Melly would become increasingly close with the MUBU crew's most infamous member, MUBU Krump, who DJ Academics would famously nickname the Chirac scorekeeper due to Crump's deep knowledge about the city's gang law and his propensity to partake in online drama.
And now we're talking about the Chirac scorekeeper. Now, if you don't know who that is, a lot of people have asked, who is a scorekeeper? Now, the person that's known as a scorekeeper is this individual that's known as Crump. Now, apparently, he's with the shits, he's a savage, but most notably, he's known for retelling hood stories on Twitter, and not only that, awarding victories. Now, he usually tells or keeps track of who the f is up, who's down, who's tied, who hit a buzzer beater, who hit a game-winning 3. He's keeping up with it. So if you want to know who the f got choked, this is the guy to ask.
Crump had previously been very close with Durk and seemingly ready to crash out for him at any moment, but now he was one of Lil Durk's worst enemies, and with Melly's notorious trigger finger and Crump's infamous Twitter fingers working in tandem, things were about to get very dark for Lil Durk. On the 31st of May 2014, only a few months after Lil Mark's death, Durk would be out in Chicago, driving around with his cousin McArthur Swindle, who was known as Lil Durk's new rap prodigy, OTF Nunu, or Nuski. They would stop at a strip mall on the 700 block of East 87th Street, and Durk would go to visit one of the stores, while Nuski stayed back and waited in the car. At around 3:20 PM, while Durk was inside the store, someone would suddenly approach the car, opening fire at Nuski, who would attempt to drive away from the situation. Unfortunately, he'd already been hit numerous times, and would crash his car into a nearby storefront window before succumbing to his injuries. Someone at the scene would even capture the moment of Lil Durk seeing his deceased cousin and breaking down, which his ops would later post on social media to mercilessly troll him. Nuski's murder remains officially unsolved, but in online theories, Melly has always been one of the main suspects. Only about an hour and a half after Nuski had been killed, Melly would simply tweet a bunch of laughing emojis with no further context. This will be followed by another tweet of Melly saying that he had heard that somebody was looking for him, and yet another tweet, this time clearly referring to the shooting by posting a bunch of emojis depicting a person running and shooting. The following day, Melly would start making fun of Nuski more directly, laughing at someone commenting on the news story about about the incident, and he would also make a tribute post to Fathead and Lil Mark, saying how he wished he could see them again, but that he has to continue turning up for them in the streets. Krump, on the other hand, had been going back and forth with Nuski even before his death, with Krump calling Nuski a fake gangster, and not long after Nuski's death, Krump would let his infamous Twitter fingers loose, dissing Nuski for being an internet gangster who had been talking tough online, but now would face the real consequences. But Krump wasn't satisfied with just tweeting, and eventually, he would even post a video of himself at the murder scene, even saying how he was there with the very person who killed Nuski. He doesn't want to be on camera, which many have taken to be an obvious reference to 051 Melly.
Them left Nuski. They left his ass right here. You feel me? They left his ass up here on folks and them tweaking. Buying some shoes. Y'all see real niggas be up here though. Niggas play with me up here on folks in this building when be on the news. I look like Nuski. Hit his ass up right here on Pat. I'm with the that did. He don't want to be on camera though. Hit his ass up right here on Pat. They fuck my boy up. Right here, you feel me? Historic events. Y'all know I'm gonna bring y'all around this shit. Historic events. Wish you would play with me, boy. I look like Nuski. He ran into this though. He ran into the children's place, died like a bitch on Pokes now. Goof. What do I look like, Nuski?
Lil Durk was obviously heartbroken by the loss of his cousin, but this would be only the beginning of 051 Melly's campaign to torment Lil Durk. Later that year, Durk would actually come face to face with Melly, as the two would run into each other during a meet and greet event for the rapper T.I., where Durk was together with his OTF crew, while Melly would arrive with King Louie's MUBU crew. This would lead to a major scuffle between the two crews, requiring the police to break things up.
Check it out. Good shit, folks. Good shit. Hey, bro, the police said, come on, bro. I already know to stay back, folks.
I want to give a special apology to my motherfucking brother, Henry from the shop, man. The shop 147. I apologize for disturbing the peace, OTF as a whole. You my brother, and you know I got your back 100%. Talking about a nigga choking me, man. What the f going on, man? You already know we can fight head up if you want to. We can shoot out on you goof ass MUBU, man. F you talking about, Crump? Why the f was you running? F wrong with you, Louie too, man. Crump and Louie.
Afterwards, Melly would troll about the incident on Twitter, saying that Durk had panicked after seeing him and had failed to do anything to him before their crews got into it, perhaps subtly implying that Durk should have at least tried something given what Melly had done to Nuski. But unfortunately for Durk, Melly had zero intentions of keeping the beef only on the internet. And less than a year after Nuski's murder, he would allegedly strike again. In the early morning hours of the 27th of March 2015, Lil Durk's manager, OTF Chino, real name Uchenna Agina, was sitting in his car outside a fast food spot on the 8400 block of Stony Island Avenue. After having taken part in a meeting with basketball star Raheem about their anti-violence campaign earlier that evening, then, just like in Nuski's murder, an unknown assailant would suddenly walk up to the car, open fire, hitting Chino multiple times. By the time an ambulance would arrive to take him to the hospital, he would end up being pronounced dead on arrival. Afterwards, MUBU Krump would do what he did best, shooting another video of him visiting the death site and trolling Lil Durk, asking the cashier at the food store if they had an order for Nuski before trolling and demanding a Chino burger.
Hey, y'all got that order for Nuski? Chino burger. Chino burger. Yeah, y'all got it. Hey, ready? Oh, thank you. Oh, Bill. What's up? Y'all with that OTLK? Oh, man. Hey, this motherfucker bogus as hell, man. Y'all, this shit ain't done, man. Y'all done put this shit back on the grill, man. This shit disgusting, man. Get this shit together, man. For real, this shit bogus as hell.
Only about a week after Chino's murder, one of the founding members of the 600 set, called Lil Boo, real name Jerome Anderson, would also reportedly be gunned down by an assailant getting around in a gold-colored car. A member of 051 called Ario, real name Arius Fitch, would be arrested as a suspect in the case later that very same day, but many have also rumoured Melly to have been involved in the case, particularly as Lil Boo's sister would later diss Melly after his death, telling him to say hi to his brother in the afterlife. Following Chino's murder, Lil Durk has been rumoured to have placed a $150,000 bounty on Melly's head, which while unproven, may not be far-fetched given the murder-for-hire charges that Lil Durk is currently locked up for. This would allegedly lead to a young member of the THF-46 set called Raheem, who was only 15 years old at the time, to try and hunt Melly down a few months later in May, actually catching him and other 051 members on the 6000 block of South Wentworth Avenue and opening fire at them, hitting Melly in the head and foot, whilst also hitting others, including Lil Boo's alleged killer Ario. All victims would be taken to hospital with serious injuries, but miraculously, nobody would die in the incident, and afterwards, pictures were posted online showing Melly with crutches and a cast on his leg, while he would also jump on Twitter and let everybody know that he wasn't shaken by the incident one bit, as Melly's brother Wu would also later tell Zach TV.
Hey, I got two brothers and they know it. Arrow, check it out. What's up, what's up? My big brother Arrow, my big brother Melly, y'all know we blood. Zach and all this shit. Finna see all this shit. Shout out to Shaq one time. Shout out to JCV, man.
My nigga.
All the time. Free wrong? It's your money, man. I tell you different on the camera, man. They be lying, man. We doing this shit, man. Look, catch me. That one headshot, one shit y'all did, boy. Hey, no, shout out. He really straight off that headshot, man. Y'all know it.
But unfortunately for Raheem, shooting the Chirac Gravedigger but not killing him meant that he was going to be moving with a huge target on his back from that point onwards. And Melly would make it clear by swearing on Lil Mark's life that he was going to make his enemies suffer. Only a few days later, on the 24th of May, Raheem and another teen were walking in an alley near 45th Street and Cottage Grove Avenue in the Bronzeville neighborhood, when someone would ambush them and shoot both, killing Raheem while injuring his friend. Once again, Melly's friend 051 Ario, who had just last month been arrested in the relation to the murder of Lil Boo, and who had been one of the people injured in the shooting together with Melly, would be arrested for the murder. This time, the arrest would also lead to charges. Police reports would later reveal how Ario's arrest had led to an absurd moment where he would allegedly pleasure himself inside the interrogation room. During the trial, the prosecutor would argue that Ario had murdered Raheem to avenge the earlier shooting that had also injured Melly. But once again, despite persistent rumors that Melly had also participated in the shooting, and numerous times that Melly had seemingly dissed Raheem and even implied that he'd taken part in the murder, Melly himself would never be charged.
In smoke, we ain't doing shit. I don't know.
We don't know. I don't know what to, we ain't smoking nobody.
I got shot 2 weeks. He expired.
You want me to read you a bedtime story and tuck you in?
Oh yeah.
Tell you about this when he walked down this dark alley. He ain't make it to the other end of the alley.
I was just reading the comments, bro. I'm
just asking you. You said you finna go to sleep.
I am.
And I say you want me to tell you about this story about this nigga, right? He went in through the one end of the alley, but he didn't make it to the other end. It was a black alley to take the story.
Never heard of it.
It's a story. Why you never heard of it? Why you wasn't there? Of course. You know what I'm saying?
Never heard of it.
After Raheem's murder, Melly would seemingly lay low for over a year, but in November 2016, he would allegedly strike again. On the 26th of November, a mass shooting would take place inside a party on the 8800 block of South Exchange Avenue, which would end up killing 18-year-old Daquan Barnett, also known as Bankroll Q from Melly's 051 Young Money set, a shooting that also injured 5 others. The online rumors would later claim that the shooting was done by youngsters from the so-called Motown part of Chicago, a neighborhood that's for the longest time been associated with the Black P Stones. One of these youngsters, called Breeze, would later seemingly brag about the shooting on Twitter, but meanwhile, another one would end up losing his life less than 24 hours later. The following day after the fatal party, at around 2:03 p.m, 18-year-old Delvon Weston, known in the streets as Lil Dell from the Folly Boys set, which is one of the many sets based in Motown, was sitting in a parked car on the 8800 block of South Marshfield Avenue in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood, when a dark-colored SUV would pull up next to him and someone would open fire, hitting Dell several times in the chest. And while he was reportedly able to drive himself to the Christ Medical Center, he would ultimately be pronounced dead at 2:22 p.m. Only a few minutes after Dell was pronounced dead at the hospital, 051 Melly would hop on Twitter, simply tweeting, "I'm at Army alone," followed by "right back," as if he was celebrating a successful get back. This was followed by a tweet saying, "Finna go change my clothes," that he would post together with a video showing himself sitting in a car while talking to a person, who would show a gun to the camera before seemingly saying how they had got someone or something.
No, you're a little No, you're a bite him. Oh yeah. You got them.
Now what y'all talking about? When? Man, damn.
When you gotta get your girlfriend, you gotta be faithful, bro.
I got a girlfriend.
You gotta get like me. You gotta get like me. You got
girlfriend named I'm out of that though, G. What's wrong?
The person who Melly was talking with was a little-known face in the drill scene at the time, but he would later become known in connection to Lil Durk's murder-for-hire allegations, as this person would turn out to be none other than Stephon Mack, who would also be eventually killed in 2022, allegedly as a retaliation for the murder of Lil Durk's brother D-Thang. But later on, Melly's other friends would also often make posts on social media implying that Dell's murder was connected to the death of Bankroll Q, and that Melly had in fact had something to do with it. But besides tweets, the murder of Dell, like so many of Melly's other alleged bodies, is only based on online rumors and theories. However, in 2017, Melly would allegedly commit a murder that would almost get him caught. On the 13th of June, at approximately 10:30 p.m, residents on the 5000 block of Drexel Boulevard would report gunshots, and in the building's gangway, 22-year-old Deandre Smith was found lying dead, his body riddled with bullets. The investigators would eventually learn that Deandre, known in the streets as Lord Dre, was a friend of 051 Melly, and on the day of his death, he had been asked by Melly to participate in the robbery of a drug dealer. However, this robbery plan was allegedly just a ruse to get Dre to meet Melly, who he might have known deep down was out to get him, as Dre would allegedly text his brother to let him know that he was with Melly in case something happened to him. Melly and a woman named Tiara would then allegedly drive Dre to the building on Drexel Boulevard before Melly would shoot him in the gangway. But why would Melly kill somebody who had supposedly been his friend? Perhaps they'd had a falling out recently, or perhaps for a much darker reason. Because if the investigators are to be believed, the reason had a much more sinister explanation, as Melly had allegedly learned that there was a $12,000 bounty that had been placed on Dre's head, which was money that Melly needed to bond out his brother Wu, who had been arrested 2 days earlier on weapons charges. In fact, Melly and his brother Wu would even allegedly have poorly disguised coded conversations about the murder plot on recorded phone calls while Wu was still in jail, while a witness would tell the investigators that Melly had tried to claim to her that it was THF-46 who were trying to kill him and Dre, and that both Melly and Dre had money on their heads, and it was only a matter of time before one of them would kill the other to claim the bounty. However, at the time, the police simply didn't have enough evidence to hold Melly on these charges, and while they didn't know it at the time, before they could ever capture him for good, it would already be too late, both for Melly and his next victims. At the end of 2017, Melly's good friend MUBU Krump would be released from federal prison after he'd been locked up for about 2 years, and he would get back onto the streets and online and do what he does best: troll, even dropping a song dissing Durk and his crew titled OTFK, where he would diss numerous gangs and sets like THF-46 and Dameron, as well as dead people like Nuski and Chino. Krump would keep disrespecting his ops, perhaps thinking they had all gone Hollywood together with Lil Durk, but unfortunately for Krump, there were plenty of his enemies still left who were willing to show him that he wasn't the only tough guy in the city, and that even having a top shooter like Melly around couldn't save him. In the early morning hours of May 25th, 2018, Krump and Melly were attending a party on the 6800 block of South Morgan Street, only a few blocks away from Lil Durk's Dameron set's hood. While Krump, whose real name is Ronald Krump, was standing outside the party with another man, a car would drive by and someone inside would open fire, striking both. Krump would pass away from his injuries, but the other man would end up surviving after a surgery. Now, there's been many rumors about that second victim, with many claiming that this person had in fact been Melly himself and that he had actually been the main target. But while Melly seemingly was in the party, he would deny having been the second victim while on an Instagram live with Durk's good friend and OTF affiliate Bezu from THF-46.
If I was there, it wouldn't go on. If I was there, it wouldn't go on. You could say one person, and I wasn't there. I was in the bush.
Lying, bro. You know I know you lying.
What situation? You just say one person out there.
No, bro, we getting recorded, bro. You know that. I'm not gonna say no name. You know what's going on.
I just told you I was that one person. And what was I doing when it was going on? I was fucking running to gunfire?
Yeah.
I ain't no stupid.
Super Saber, right?
You heard me saying to you, I'm real smart. You even told me I'm not no idiot.
The police report on the shooting would also note how the second victim had no gang affiliations or previous arrests, and the victim's age would also be reported as 28, while Melly was only 26 at the time. But whether Melly himself had been shot or not, he was looking to avenge his good friend's death. And while nobody would be arrested for the murder, if dissing was anything to go by, Melly would certainly have no problem deciphering who had been behind the hit, as people connected to Lil Durk's OTF crew were quick to start rejoicing over Crump's death, with everybody from Lil Durk to Bezu and even King Von, who had only recently returned home after beating his own murder charges, would participate in the dissing. Bezu would seemingly even later imply that the police had come looking for him after Crump's murder.
Hey, look, the Crump woofing at me on the internet. Somebody smoking, they come get me. You finna do the same.
However, one of the main suspects that the online sleuths have attached to Crump's murder is actually Lil Durk's childhood friend, Lil Steve, from his own Dameron set, who actually many consider may have been the actual triggerman. Durk's fans have even considered these lyrics from his popular No Auto Durk song from September 2018 to be an admission that Steve was actually behind Crump's murder, with Durk rapping that the ops can't have a party on their block if Steve is out there. But before Melly would get his revenge on Durk, he would allegedly finish another job that he had started a long time ago. On the 19th of August, only a few months after Crump's murder, 19-year-old Tyrone Marshal was hanging out with a friend on the 4000 block of the South Calumet Avenue in the Bronzeville neighborhood. Tyrone, known in the streets as Twhy, was also known as an aspiring rapper, but Melly would have a more personal connection with him, as Twhy had been a friend of Lil Dell, whom Melly had allegedly killed as revenge for the murder of his friend Bankroll Q. Moreover, Twhy had allegedly been present during Bankroll's murder. At around 3:27 p.m, while Twhy was leaning on a car and talking to his friend, another car would pull up, and someone from the inside would fire shots, hitting Twhy in the head, and he would later be pronounced dead at the hospital. Interestingly, this time, a witness would actually recognize Melly as the shooter, but once again, the police would be too slow to act, and before they were able to gather enough evidence to catch Melly, it would already be too late. Even with the most conservative estimates, Melly had now gotten away with several murders, but he wasn't done with his revenge campaign before he would get back for the murder of Krump, and only about 2 months after Twhy's murder, he would get his opportunity. On the 8th of October, Lil Durk's big brother and manager D-Thang was out in their hometown with some childhood friends, including Durk's cousin Baby D, real name Darnell Banks. In the early morning hours, they were driving in the Pullman neighborhood on the far south side. They would reportedly be at a parking lot of the McDonald's when somebody would open fire at them, even hitting one of the windows of the restaurant. They would pull off with their car, but would eventually come to a stop on the 11200 block of South Cottage Grove Avenue, where police would find 3 of the men suffering from serious gunshot wounds. D-Thang was one of the people shot, but he would end up surviving, but unfortunately Baby D wouldn't be as lucky. He was rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where he would tragically pass away hours later. Baby D's murder would be yet another unsolved murder, but online theories have connected Melly to the incident based on 2 main pieces of circumstantial evidence. First, a photo would circulate online of one of Baby D's cousins wearing a Long Live Baby D shirt with an F Melly print boldly placed on the front, together with a picture of Melly. This showing that people close to Baby D indeed certainly seemed to consider Melly to be responsible. Moreover, after Melly was killed, D-Thang would reportedly share an Instagram story that seemed to celebrate Melly's death, while implying that anyone who had ever done anything to him had died. He would also tweet after Melly's death how any op who had ever shot at him wasn't here anymore to tell the story. Baby D is often considered to have been Melly's final victim, and unfortunately for Melly, before his life would come to an end, he would have to experience yet another major loss on his side of the war. On the 3rd of January 2019, Melly's good friend Mota, real name Wilbert Morris, was driving with a friend called Side, real name Marcus Clark, on the 5000 block of South Indiana Avenue in the Bronzeville neighborhood, when someone would open fire at them shortly before 1 p.m, hitting one of them in the chest while the other one in the face, killing both at the scene. Mota and Side were from Jaro City, a set who were at the time very close with 051 Melly's 051 Young Money set, the two even sometimes going by the connected name YM Jaro. And personally, Mota was one of Melly's closest friends, his death clearly being one of the toughest losses that Melly had faced in the streets, with Melly swearing that one day he would make those people responsible cry like he had. And once again, if dissing was anything to go by, the usual suspects close to Lil Durk's OTF would begin taking shots at Mota and Side. This time, OTF's younger generation would take the charge, like the rapper MUBU, who would preview a song on his Instagram where he would diss FBG Duck, whose murder he would eventually be convicted of being part of, as well as dissing both Mota and Side with a slick double entendre.
Those from 63rd couldn't get back up, knock a hold out the side when we spin rap up.
No doubt, given enough time, Melly would have claimed yet another victim to avenge the murder of Mota, but given the amount of havoc and destruction that he had caused, even Melly himself likely knew that his days were numbered, or perhaps he didn't, because during his Instagram live with Bezu, Melly would proudly claim that he was never going to move out of Chicago, and that he was going to live until he was 100, with even Bezu giving him credit for knowing how to move in his hometown.
I'm gonna move to Mexico, man. Start a new life, bro. I'm scared.
Oh, no, I ain't never moving out of Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
I love it here.
Make it here.
You said make it here.
Sure.
I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it to 100 years.
Sure.
I'm gonna be one of the last ones standing.
Yeah, you know how to move. Duck that taco.
Nah, I ain't ducking my taco. Just say you said it right the first time. I know how to move. I ain't ducking my taco.
You know how to move. I'm gonna give that to you.
Perhaps Melly could have ducked his main enemies like the OTF until he was an old man, but the problem was that Melly had made so many enemies that even he probably couldn't keep count of them all. And so on his last day, Melly would be right where he was comfortable at, attending a party in the hood of Jaro City, only a few blocks away from his main enemies like 600 and O Block. As mentioned, Melly was close with Jaro City, but unfortunately, he had also made some enemies amongst the set, because according to later police reports, a witness would reveal that Melly had shot up the house of a Gyro City member called Lil Daryl, real name Daryl Rhyme, which was possibly a retaliation for the fact that Daryl might have been telling on Melly in the murder investigation of Lord Dre. These events would lead to a fateful moment in the party, where Melly would allegedly run into one of Daryl's friends, called 007 Nate, just as one of the partygoers was filming a video, capturing the chilling last moments of Melly's life on camera.
Man, I just killed y'all.
The police would later check the security cameras of the building, seeing that 007 Nate, real name Nathaniel Hicks, had arrived at the party around 12:30 AM, and at one point he'd even posed at one of the security cameras with his gun, before then allegedly shooting Melly at around 2:45 AM and then running out of the building. Nate would then be identified as the shooter by multiple witnesses, and he was eventually even caught a few days later with the murder weapon still on him. But despite all of this evidence, the state attorney's office would ultimately refuse to prosecute Nate due to the witnesses' refusal to cooperate. In the end, just like Melly had seemingly escaped justice so many times due to the no snitching code that rules the streets, ultimately this code would also make sure that Melly's family wouldn't be receiving any closure after his death. And no doubt, considering how much the Chicago police knew that Melly was terrorizing the streets and taking people out, perhaps there was some sick satisfaction for the cops in just not making an effort to get justice for one of the city's most demonic killers. Ultimately, 051 Melly left one of the most shocking legacies in the streets of Chicago, a certified gang assassin bordering on serial killer with at least 8 rumored murders attributed to him online, and perhaps even more that the internet doesn't even know about. Melly didn't rap a single lyric, but he became famous off the back of his reputation that echoed through the lyrics of more focused and famous Chicago drillers who survived and made music. His dark legacy lives through these songs, the IG posts, Reddit posts and comments, and YouTube documentaries, painting him as the so-called Gravedigger of Chirac. But at the end of the day, Melly's story is truly one of a tragic waste of life. What did he really achieve? There's nothing cool or fun about terrorizing your community and taking the lives of promising young people who could have all been doing something better with their time. Melly was clearly terrorizing Lil Durk and the OTF and the THF crews, and while it was other people who ultimately had the last laugh, there's no winners here. There's nothing cool about being the biggest demon or the biggest killer from your neighborhood. And despite his fearsome reputation as an untouchable killer who everyone was scared of and supposedly knew how to move, Melly winded up getting touched too, getting caught lacking and losing his life in an incredibly unremarkable way that was far from heroic. So, if there's a lesson from this story, it's that there really are no winners in the streets, no trophies for being the top killer, just a shortcut to an early grave and a very big list of sins to answer for when you do reach whatever comes after life. So I hope you learned something from this story and can go and do something positive today. Thanks for watching. Peace out.